for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we have a number of people signed up for open forum this evening. I'm going to ask Town Council President, Mr. Edwards, I'm going to bump him up on the list out of a courtesy and the fact that he's a dad of three youngsters. So if you don't mind, Mr. Edwards.
Madam Chair, members of the school committee, thank you. And I do appreciate it. There is an outside chance I get home before they're all asleep, so hooray. I'm here today because the school chair and vice chair met with myself and the vice chair of the council today. I understand there's a lot of anxiety about proposed changes that are going on in the district. I did express my frustration with the fact that we seem to be in a never-ending cycle of, running into, fiscal cliffs and scurrying at the last minute trying to solve that problem. And the school committee does have an unenviable task of balancing their budget, which they assured myself and the vice that they were going to do. That being said, we did come to agreement that the outlook for the town needs to not be on a one-year basis, especially when it comes to education. It needs to be further reaching and looking forward. So to that end, once we get through this initial budget period, we will be scheduling joint meetings between the school committee and the town council so that we can start to hash out what that plan looks like. There is, I'm a graduate of, the Tiverton Public Schools, Fort Barton Middle School, high school. I have a lot of respect for what the schools have done. They've obviously shaped me as a person. And so I want to make sure that, the next generation does have that same opportunity. And I think in order to do that, we need to come up with a comprehensive plan for what that looks like 5-10 years down the road, so that we stop running into annual issues and we can all be on the same page, because we do, at least from the council side, have an opportunity to make strategic investments, to enhance what the education system is here. And obviously, we on the council are committed to doing that, as we have been. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, sir, and it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to more of these collaborations.
Just quickly, from my perspective, Councilor Edwards, I do want to thank you for taking the leadership role on this and for calling the meeting, and I agree. I think it was a good discussion, and I look forward to ones going forward, but I thank you for your leadership on the topic.
Okay, thank you. Next on the list, we have Jennifer Wolf from 159 Hooper Street.
Good evening, Jennifer Wolf, 159 Hooper Street. I really think the school committee should consider hiring a public relations coach. That's a half-joking remark I've made over the years, but please don't go doing that. We have no money. As I watch meetings, whether in person or on the YouTube stream, I often find myself perplexed by the tone, decorum, and possible motivations of this board. My apologies in advance to the new board members. Unfortunately, you are now part of the collective that is the current iteration of this committee. At times, I find myself screaming either in my head or at my phone, hoping committee members will just listen. Not just to respond, but to listen actively. Listen with your whole body and not just your ears. I honestly think committee members should have to adhere to the same cell phone policy our students have to, off or silent in your backpack. Along with listening, body language, tone, and word choice matter. For example, stating with defensive body language and passive-aggressive tones for over a year now that Fort Barton is saving us money, or it's a cut, then switching to it's a savings, and back to no one said it was a savings, it's a cut. I'm not naive. I personally know that this is a cut. However, it is very hard to put toothpaste back into a tube once it's been squeezed out. These conflicting statements leave the public confused and frustrated. I implore you, committee members, to choose your words carefully and thoughtfully. While we're on the subject of listening, I would love to hear from all of our committee members, not just the same two voices. And when they are allowed to speak, give them the time of day that you expect from them. We, the people of Tiverton, voted for you to act as a liaison between us and our schools. I have expectations for the people I vote for, and two of those expectations are: one, to be well prepared for every meeting, i.e. proposal bids should be dispersed to committee members upon receipt, as well as having had a comprehensive planning of consolidation with cost analysis, timelines, class caps, etc., prior to a vote to shutter the school. And two, to vote on issues rather than abstain on crucial agenda items. Abstentions should be reserved for conflicts of interest or absences, not because you want to remain neutral in the eyes of the public. Lastly, it feels like friendships and bonds have formed between the administration and school committee members. I understand that happens, but for years, many have perceived that decisions are made based on those relationship dynamics rather than what may actually be right and beneficial for our students and educators. I understand that our district is not a unicorn in the troubles we face. We have what I call legacy problems that predate this committee, but gross mismanagement of finances and of the person you hired to lead our district, compounded with our legacy problems, have created the perfect storm that has brought us to this mess that we're in. Once the dust settles from this storm, this committee has the opportunity to rewrite how local history portrays them. Think back to the years when you were on this side of the table when your children were small, and remember your list of whys that fueled your decision to run for this committee in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Melissa Medeiros, 823 Crandall Road.
And I have my phone, but it's because I'm the timer tonight. So I'm keeping track of the 3 minutes.
Melissa Medeiros, 823 Crandall Road. I have a 6th grader at the middle school and a 3rd grader at Ranger. So my 3rd grader will be affected by this decision right now. I've also been a teacher for 17 years. I've taught in elementary schools and I've taught in middle schools, so I have both perspectives. Last year, I stood up here and spoke about how inappropriate it is to put 4th grade in a middle school. At last week's meeting, I listened to the teachers speak, and I heard one of them say that although they were terrified to put 4th grade in the middle school, this seems to be our best option. So while I'm very tempted to rattle off all the reasons why I think this move is a bad idea, I believe that this decision is the way we're going, no matter what the public opinion is at this point. With that being said, I came up here to say that we need to be committed to making our 4th graders still feel like they are in elementary school. And this responsibility cannot just be placed on the 4th grade teachers. We simply cannot place 4th grade at TMS and expect it to feel like an elementary school. We need to make a shift to redesign 4 and 5 as a learning academy that's tailored to that age group. I do think this could have a positive impact on the 5th graders who are still young to be in a middle school setting. Just to give you an example of the cultural difference between elementary and middle school. Around Christmas time, my 3rd grader would come home bursting with excitement about how Mrs. Pont was making announcements about where the elf could be hiding in the building. This may seem like a little thing, but it all contributes to the magic of childhood. Those are the types of innocent things that will be lost, and it's a hard pill for us to swallow. We need to create an environment that's different for 4th and 5th than 6th through 8th, because that's a big age span with different needs. We can't just throw them in the building and say that the teachers will take care of them. Of course, as a teacher myself, I absolutely believe that they will. But it's not just about what happens in the classroom. The culture of a school is just as important of an experience and pathway to success for students. Us parents with 3rd graders right now can't help feeling like our children are the guinea pigs in this situation. We need a solid plan with guarantees about what things will look like for them. Not just the day-to-day, but what about assemblies that are geared towards our younger learners? What about positive behavioral incentives that are appropriate for elementary students? Field day, color run, all those things. Mrs. Krager mentioned having parents work alongside teachers and administrators to ensure that needs are being met during this big transition. I absolutely want to be involved in that type of a committee, being that I have the educational experience and a student who's being directly affected by this decision. I think it's fair to say that no one really thinks this is a good idea. It's just what we have to do. So we need to be committed to making it successful, not just making it work. This separation of grade levels is not just for protection, but to give our kids the kind of school experience they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have Denise Truver, 9 Cross Road.
Good evening, Denise Truver, Grade 3 Ranger School. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have taught in Tiverton for 35 years under 6 superintendents and numerous school committees. And one thing I can say with certainty is that we've faced budget issues more often than not during these years. This is nothing new. Over a decade ago, Mrs. Polish warned us that if we didn't correct the structural deficit that existed then, we'd end up in the situation we're in now. After listening to last week's discussion, there are a few points that I felt I needed to address. First, in my 35 years here, I have never felt retaliated against for speaking out. I've disagreed with superintendents. I've had heated exchanges. I've spoken out at a variety of situations. I've stood at school committee meetings and advocated for my students without fear of retaliation. I'm sorry if others have had different experiences, but I don't think it's fair to generalize and paint with a broad brush. Another point that was raised was about targeting 800 children to bring back into our schools. According to the census, there are about 2,357 school-age children in Tiverton. Of those, around 737 are under the age of 5, leaving us with roughly about 1,600 eligible for school. In addition, we have 192 students in out-of-district placements, but we can't assume that those families are avoiding public schools for fear of leadership. Some may choose private or Catholic schools for religious reasons or tradition. Others are placed out of district per their academic or social emotional needs. And to suggest that there are 800 students not attending our schools is just not true. And to suggest that those who do not attend our schools are all afraid to send their children here is disingenuous and an unfounded assumption. I was also extremely concerned about the suggestion to just eliminate specialists in favor of keeping a building open. Simply put, doing so will leave our most vulnerable populations without the support they need and deserve. In addition, one of the outcomes of last year was huge cuts for our middle school, leaving our middle school teachers managing the same number of students as the total enrollment at Fort Barton. Each teacher managing 125 plus students, correcting, contacting parents, building relationships with no time to meet with colleagues to discuss students due to cuts. This is an age where teachers need to pay close attention, and that's not fair to anyone. It's not in the best interest of all of our students. I understand that many want to keep Fort Barton open, and in a different situation, I would be standing here to agree with them. But the truth is that this is a financial crisis. The teachers at Fort Barton are exceptional, and they will continue to be exceptional, no matter where they teach. If we were to experience a disaster of some sort that forced us to close a building and relocate, we would have to adapt. Teaching children to be flexible in challenging situations is a valuable life lesson. At least in this situation, this closing would allow us to possibly find more stable financial footing so we can reopen once these new housing developments are built and our enrollment increases, as was done in the past. These are difficult circumstances, but at this point, we need acceptance decision. Delaying further only adds to the uncertainty, and it's not helping our students or our teachers. Last year, the school committee and the administration were criticized for waiting too long. Now they're criticized for acting too early. There is no perfect time for making tough decisions, but fairness to all of our school communities requires a decision, a strong plan, and that will take time. Let's please put aside the chaos and arguing. Let's form some work groups, get to work to plan and move forward. Our children will follow our example. If we are positive, they will be too. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Amy Mullen, 38 Harbor View.
Thank you. Last year, the high school and mostly the middle school bore the brunt of the cuts necessary to keep our 5 schools strong. This year, you've made the difficult decision to close Fort Barton, and now need to determine where that population of students should go and what other changes, if any, should be made. The best consolidation plan should be one that considers the needs of our entire district. And at this point in the year, everyone is anxious for a decision to be made because we know more cuts are coming. This isn't over yet. And for all of you who are new to Tiverton, none of this is new. I've been a teacher here for 31 years and was president of the union for 21 of them. This is nothing new. It was happening before Peter came, and until the schools get out of the structural deficit, it will continue to happen. When our budgets are level funded, this is what happens. That's what got us here, and that's what keeps us here. But I digress. The needs of our entire district. You can see how much disruption it's caused the Fort Barton community to close their school. So the less disruption, the better. It would be ideal to have pre-K through 5 in all of our elementary schools. But we can't even fit pre-K through 4 in the 2 elementary schools we have for next year. If we could move the 4 Fort Barton K through 3 classrooms to Ranger and the 2 special education classrooms to Ranger, those students still could have their teachers that they were planning on having next year at Fort Barton. We would have time to set up a committee to work on ways to blend traditions and cultures and the 2 schools so that everyone would feel welcome and at home. The same could be done for the 4th graders because it would be necessary for them to move to the middle school. This would also leave 2 classrooms at Pecasset available for any bubble classrooms that might be necessary. It would also give us that time to plan for our future. I know some parents have expressed concerns about 4th graders at the middle school. Our 4th graders are not babies. They're early adolescents who have more in common developmentally with their 5th grade peers than they do their 3rd grade classmates. Adolescence is the phase of life in childhood between childhood and adulthood from ages 10 to 19. Our 4th graders are 9 and 10-year-olds. Early adolescence is from age 10 to 13. The ages of our 4th and 5th graders. I'll share with you that I live in Portsmouth, and 2 of my 3 children attended 4th grade at Portsmouth Middle School. 1 of my children attended 4th grade at the elementary. All 3 of my children had amazing 4th grade educations. None of them were harmed or learned anything inappropriate from any 8th grader or 7th grader. They learned it all from their friends or at home. You should be much more concerned with their social media than 8th graders. I've also taught in all 4 of our elementary schools. I've worked with all of our teachers. They're all elite and outstanding. What makes a building special isn't the building. Where the magic really happens is with our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Corey Marchand, 24 Christina Drive.
Hello. The first point that I'd like to emphasize to everyone here tonight is that no matter which plan is chosen, we do have to remember that all of our children, from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, are strong and resilient. Personally, I am finding it very difficult to hear some of the language being used to describe our children. So they're not weak, they're not vulnerable, they're not victims, and we can't make them victims. They're strong and they're independent and they're capable. And I feel like last week, I felt like even myself, I went down the rabbit hole a little bit on this. So to illustrate it, let me give you some examples. I have a 4th grader. My 4th grader goes to the bathroom by himself in a restaurant. My 4th grader is perfectly capable of running into East Lake Variety to get trash bags. My fourth grader, if he forgets something in Longplex, he can cross the parking lot, go inside and get it, and come back out again. He's independent. And most of our fourth graders are really independent. And so I don't love the plan, right? I'm not standing here to advocate for fourth graders being in a middle school, but I am here to advocate that our kids are independent and they're strong, and whatever system we put in place for them has to allow them to continue to be independent and strong. So we can't have a staff member, having to walk our kids to the bathroom, right? Like, no one should have to do that at their school. They're able to go to the bathroom by themselves at a restaurant. So I just wanted to put that in perspective because I think that's a concern for me. The second suggestion I have is about the process and where we go from here. So I really think that right now there's a lack of trust between the public, this committee, Dr. Sanchioni. I think that we need to work on rebuilding that trust. And one suggestion I have is to, as quickly as possible, put a committee together who can spearhead these changes that are being made. So we all know Dr. Sanchioni will be leaving, and we wish him well. But moving forward, who is at the head of these changes? And so we have full-time principals. We have other administrators in the district who have a lot of skill. They certainly know our kids. They know the parents and families in this district. Our principals, for all intents and purposes, are the face of the schools. So if you create a committee where they can spearhead and see these changes through from now all the way to fall when our kids enter school, I think that could rebuild some trust with people in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Shannon McNamara, 65 East DeMello.
Hello, everyone. So I wasn't here last week. We were the family that got hit with the flu. So the talk of closing the middle school actually came up at last week's meeting, and I just wanted to put out there that this was something I kind of said privately to others, but I do feel that it can't just be closing that building. This could be something, and I did bring this up at one of our other meetings, where we could have that conversation with Little Compton and leave the decision for where to send kids for high school off the table. It could just be about how to save K through 8 in both of our communities. Their numbers are dwindling. If you look at their FY 23 to 24, they only had 200 students K through 8. And they don't have the capacity to service special ed or IEPs. And if we were able to combine K through 8 in both of those districts, housing pre-K through 4 at our 3 elementary school buildings, which I think we can all agree are in the best condition, and sending both Little Compton and Tiverton middle school students to Wilbur, which they have a beautiful building, I think that it could do a lot for both of our communities. We've seen the test scores in the middle school falling, and I have to wonder sometimes if it's the quality of that building. So again, that's just something to consider, and then using the middle school in our town for those out-of-district placement adults, and if we're really serious about revenue, bringing in some adult programs at night there. Their budget for pre-K through 8 was around $7 million for last year. And again, that was for 215 students. If we're not going to go that route, and we are going to, go with the decision of putting the fourth graders in the middle school, I would love if we can just decide that is the plan then, and let's do it correctly. I think when I had heard Corey talk, a committee is great. I love that idea. I also love how she knows how to do it because she's worked in a K through 8 building for a lot of years, and if we could ask her to be a resource for us. We just need to make the best decision that we can so we have a successful year next year, and we can work towards getting that plan in place as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Donna Larson from Ranger Elementary School.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Donna Larson, and I'm a fourth grade teacher at Ranger. No matter how the configuration ultimately unfolds, we must remember that our top priority must be our students, their learning, well-being, and overall experience. Change is never easy, but if we come together with a shared commitment to putting students first, we can make this transition successful. Once a final decision is made, we must form a committee representing all stakeholders, teachers, administrators, staff, parents, and students, to ensure a smooth transition. This can't be a process dictated by a few. It has to be a collaborative effort where all voices are heard, concerns are addressed, and solutions are found together. Other districts around us have faced similar challenges, and we cannot be immune to the realities of a declining student population. But that makes it even more essential to care for our students, to provide them with the best possible education and school experience, no matter what adjustments we make. We only move forward and maintain the educational excellence we all want for Tiverton by working together. If we keep our focus where it belongs, on the students, I have no doubt we can navigate these challenges in a way that strengthens our schools and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Stephanie Palazzo from 153 Fish Road.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Palazzo, 153 Fish Road, and I am here tonight as both a parent and an advocate, not just for my child, but for every 9-year-old caught in the uncertainty of this decision. My daughter is a 9-year-old at Picasset, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist working in the behavioral health field over 19 years. Let's be clear, this is not an educational decision. This is a financial decision made at the expense of our children's safety, development, and well-being. And we don't have to guess the consequences. The research that I've read already tells us what happens when you push young children into middle school too soon. Studies show that transitions between schools are linked to a drop in academic achievement. In fact, students who stay in an elementary setting through 5th grade often perform better academically and have higher confidence in their abilities than those pushed into the middle school earlier. There's a 5-year age gap between 9-year-olds and 14-year-olds, longer than the entire time most children spend in elementary school. As a behavioral health specialist, I confidently indicate that one negative incident, just one, can alter a child's confidence, security, and trust in the world around them. So I ask you, what happens when my 9-year-old overhears a violent argument in the hall? When they witness an older student vaping or using drugs on the playground? Is there a playground? Let's discuss transparency. Many parents found out about this plan after their children stated discussing it amongst themselves. That means that our 9-year-olds are discussing really big decisions and are feeling scared. We must do better, because if we don't, the long-term consequences socially, academically, and financially will be far greater than the deficit you're trying to solve today. Please consider our children's feelings and choices while considering decisions regarding your financial burdens. Please don't forget, as you make a decision to lessen a financial burden, please make one that won't increase the burden our children may then carry in its place. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Valentina Palazzo.
Hello, my name is Valentina Palazzo. I live at 153 Fish Road, Rhode Island. I am 9 years old and a 3rd grader at Picasset Elementary School. I wanted to speak tonight to represent all of my classmates, friends, and other students who feel the same way I do. My friends and I heard the news that we may be forced to change schools in our last year. We're told we may have to go to the middle school as fourth graders or to a different elementary school. Either way, we may be going somewhere else. It took us some time to adjust to our school, and we feel safe. Next year was supposed to be special and our last year at Picasso. We were excited to be the oldest ones at our school. But now that might be taken away from us. We have no say. We are only 8 and 9-year-olds. School is already hard and we work hard. You may not know this by looking at me or listening to me, but I have overcame and still overcome many challenges every day. Just before I turned 3, I was diagnosed as hard of hearing. My left ear was so bad I had implant surgery, but in my right ear, I use a hearing aid. Every day I have to listen, learn, and keep up with my classmates extra hard. If I am forced to switch schools, I'm afraid I will have to explain my ears, and at Picasso, I don't have to. My friends accept me, and my teachers understand me. Even knowing my older teachers are there helps me feel safe. It feels scary to think we might not have that next year. We are too young to go to school and too young to have to think about this. The middle schoolers are much taller, older, and bigger than us and know a lot more. I don't want to hear what they talk about. I want to enjoy elementary school. Look at me. I'm only 46 inches tall and 50 pounds. We don't want to have to walk down the hallways like little kids, losing the independence we earned. We are afraid of being bullied and things we aren't ready for. We don't agree with your solution to change the fourth graders because of money. We rely on adults to be responsible and make good choices for us. Why do we have to pay and miss out on our last year because of your choice? We don't want to start over. We want to feel safe. Please think about our feelings. Thank you all for listening.
Ms. Valentina. Hang on. Ms. Valentina, you did an excellent job. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of open forum this evening, so we will jump into our agenda. Starting with our consent agenda, in our package tonight, we have the March enrollment report. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Excuse me, Diane?
Yes.
I was just wondering, I'm looking through the packets, and we don't have meeting minutes from February 11th, the 20th, or the 25th?
No, we don't. They haven't been finished yet.
Okay.
We will have them at our next meeting, though.
Okay, thank you.
Carolyn, can we shut off the mic? Shut off the mic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Chairperson Remarks. I have the NESDEC Superintendent Search update this evening. Last week, Mrs. Polish presented us with a check in executive session from anonymous donors to cover the bid cost of the NESDEC consultant for the superintendent search. My understanding is that these donors who have graciously made this donation recognize that while we should not commit district funds to this search, to this endeavor, while we are struggling with a potential deficit, that they agree that we should conduct a search facilitated by an uninvolved professional third party. I want to personally thank the donors for this very generous donation. As such, the bid cost of $13,760 will be paid for through this donation and not through any town funds. We will be voting on a contract at our next meeting, which is scheduled for March 18th, And we will also have the assigned consultant with us to begin the planning process that evening. I would like a motion to move number 5, old business, to after number 6, new business, to give us the opportunity to handle a few quicker items first and the larger reconfiguration discussion after that. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Thank you all. Okay, so we'll then move on our agenda to new business, beginning with item 6A, ACLU of Rhode Island, updated report on remote open meeting practices in Rhode Island. With us this evening, we have our town clerk, Joan Chabot, who has graciously offered to join us this evening and speak to this topic. So thank you, Joan.
Good evening to the school committee. Based upon the ACLU report and in the spirit of transparency, I would like to offer the school committee an opportunity to file their agendas, backup, meeting minutes, and school policy in Clerkbase. The town council has the charter, code of ordinances, the town council agenda, backup, and meeting minutes, as well as resolutions already there. And I've been working on a project to get other boards and commissions also loaded to Clerkbase so that it's easier for our community to access this information pretty quickly and also search the information. So what I'm offering is to actually, the cost for this would be paid out of the clerk's office and not out of the school budget. The process would be we would work with the school IT department. We would get them in touch with Clerkbase in order to put a link from your website to Clerkbase. And because it's in the same database, access to your, from your website or the town website would go to the same Clerkbase database, and each side would be able to see all of the information. We would also work with the school department for the person who provides the agenda and the backup and the meeting minutes to train them on how to upload the data, the documents to the Clerkbase FTP site. We would start with the current going forward with agendas, backup, and meeting minutes, but I would recommend going back to perhaps the beginning of the school year with the meeting minutes so that you have a full school year with those minutes. That would be my recommendation. So that said, all I need is a okay to go from the school committee in getting this project up and running.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Chabot. Do I have a motion to accept this offer for Clerkbase through the town and ask the superintendent and his staff to work with the town clerk for adoption as soon as reasonably possible?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Any questions?
I want to, Ms. Chabot, I love Clerkbase. I think, you know, the council started using that years ago. It's a tremendous resource, and I can't thank you enough for looping us into that. It's just such an easy source to find the backup, find the agendas, and it really allows people who can't always attend meetings to sort of see what's going on, and I just think that's a tremendous offer, and I'm really excited to see us take advantage of it, because I love it on your side.
Anyone else have any comments, questions? Yes, Kim?
I do. So it would be the agendas and the backup that would be on Clerkbase?
Yes. Okay. As well as the minutes after they're approved.
And it includes the school policy.
Right, and I know we did discuss that when we spoke. I think the policies would be probably a second part of this.
Yep.
It's going to take us a little bit longer, probably, to do that. I don't want to commit resources of the school department while they have their hands full at the moment. However, I think the faster we could move to getting this put into place and up and running, the better. I just want to clarify something. You were recommending that we go back with meeting minutes for, is it the calendar year or the school year?
I was thinking the school year. Okay. However, if you would like to go back to this calendar year, that's okay too, but I would suggest you do the whole, which is not that many meeting minutes.
No.
So,
and we can leave it up to the school department to figure out the logistics with you.
Yep.
I think that's fine. And I agree with Mrs. Polish, having been a quote-unquote, I hate to say it, town political junkie for a little while now. Clerk base is one of my favorite links on my computer. I go right to it. It is very, on the town side, very informative and helpful and shows an amazing amount of transparency. And I would love it to see our information up there as well. So I do thank you. Anyone else have any comments, questions? Okay, if none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? 5-0. We thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to it.
I am as well. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have item 6B, approve the 2025-26 school year calendar. Dr. Sanchioni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In front of you tonight, you have a proposed calendar for the 25-26 school year. This calendar basically follows the calendar that's put out by RIDE for all Rhode Island public school districts. I want to let the committee know that I've shared this with our teacher advisory committee, our parent advisory committee, both unions, our department heads at the high school, our elementary instructional leaders, and our curriculum coordinators at the middle school to get their feedback. It's a pretty straightforward and standard calendar. Again, it has the same holiday vacations as every public school system in Rhode Island. The only thing that's different for Tiverton is that we plug in 3 days before school starts for students in August, and then we're going to have 4 early release days for professional development, which the state has graciously approved. Other than that, it's basically the same calendar you've seen in the past, so I seek your approval this evening.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the 2025-26 school calendar?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so I'll open up the floor for discussion. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I will kick it off then. I do have one question. Dr. Sanchioni, June 12th of 2026. I see it marked in green. It's the 180th day. It's marked as the employees' 180th day. Should that not read students?
Students, employees, yeah, we could change the marking on that, but it's the 180th day, yep.
Okay. So at this point, that would be the planned dismissal date for the entire district is June 12th with graduation on the 5th, the Friday before, which has been our standing practice. I didn't see any other areas of concern. I will ask you, though, because I'm not familiar with the Jewish holidays, do we have no conflicts to worry about?
Well, typically, the Tiverton Public Schools, at least in the past, precedent has not taken those holidays.
Okay.
You know, we allow certainly students to take them and families to recognize them. We celebrate all diversity, but they're not something we've taken off on our calendar.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else?
I think in the past, the issue was start date that conflicted. It wasn't necessarily...
1 year it was the first day of school.
Yeah,
there was
just
a conflict.
the conflict of that. So, I mean, I guess it's not cast in stone. We certainly can...
No, we have the option to revote it at any time. You are correct. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next we have item 6C, approve early retirement incentive plan. Dr. Sanchioni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In front of you this evening, I'm outlining an incentive plan for both NEA and Council 94. It's similar to a plan that we executed in 2021 that helped save the district $80,000. The idea behind it is you try to incentivize teachers who are near or close to retirement, who were at our top step with some revenue to announce their retirement, and in return, then you plan on hiring someone at a lower step. Usually the delta between the two salaries can be anywhere between $30,000 and $50,000. Considering the budget constraints that we have this year, I believe we should take every option to try to save revenue and be able to apply that to positions that we may be losing. The key point of this is that no incentive would be paid until the next fiscal year, till the savings was realized. So again, this mirrors what we did in 2021, and in 2021 it was pretty successful.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the early retirement incentive plan?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Do we have a number? Is anyone looking to retire?
Early response from our unions, we do potentially have a few. Yep.
And that's just on people on step 10?
Yeah, that's the only way you make the savings, is by top step people.
So there wouldn't be a sliding scale, it would just be 10. If you're on 10, you're, okay. Thank you.
I do have one question that I was looking to get clarification on, Dr. Sanchioni. Obviously, NEA members, that's pretty clear. You're talking about our teachers and our school nurses. Then you have a separate one for secretaries and custodians. I note specifically that, is that aimed to exclude teacher assistants?
Yeah, we work with Council 94, and it just comes down to what teacher assistants make and what we could offer them and what we could save on hiring a new teacher assistant. There just wasn't any potential savings there.
Okay. I think in addition, we need our TAs.
Yeah.
And would this also apply, this offer also apply to the central office staff or any of the other perhaps non-student facing positions that I'm not thinking of as well?
It applies to anyone in those two unions, right?
Anyone in the
Typically,
union?
any of those positions you may be referring to, if they were to leave, we'd be hiring someone at basically the same salary. So
Okay.
there's no savings there.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Anyone else have any questions?
So you're not taking the fact that a TA would come in at a lower step and also at their benefits, that's not playing into where they could also get this incentive?
The difference between a TA at their top step and their beginning step isn't that great. And so if you'd have to offer them a incentive of $300 or $400, and I'm not sure that incentivizes anybody. It's just not a big gap between those two steps where it is for the teachers and the 12-year employees.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor? Five, Ms. Pavo? You're opposed, so 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving along, we have the FY26 budget update. Mr. Andrade.
Yes, thank you. Danny's going to, oh. I think he's gonna put it up first, right? There we go. Did you do that, or he did that? He did that. Just see if it works. So in front of you tonight's the FY26 budget preliminary review. As you know, we have to submit this to the town council preliminary on March 19th. So as this is pretty much the first detailed version you are seeing, the team has obviously gone over many of these areas in the past, such as utilities, special ed, and technology. But I will do a deep dive into every line item we have this evening for the most part. So before we started, we met with all the leadership team met with all the principals. The principals met with the department heads. We met with parent advisory, teacher advisory, all the different stakeholders, and we got a lot of input. Obviously, with the budget constraints, a lot of the language was basically hard-nosed, unfortunately, because of the situation we're in. But part of this budget was taken into consideration with those parties. We also have many other budget considerations, such as pending contract negotiations with both unions, transportation contract, special ed services review, out-of-district tuitions, health insurance, and maintenance and repairs. We also have other factors that go into the budget, such as wage adjustment factors, inflation, and revenue growth factors. With these guiding principles, we looked at adequate level of school funding. It's not only on the downward shift, the enrollment, but we have some other budget pressures, such as aging facilities, state funding formula, we were hit hard last year, there's pension reform, and we also have increased student needs. We have a mental health crisis throughout the United States, higher cost of special ed service due to this, and we have many variables, ratio of students to teachers, investments to move forward to be strategic, and demographics. So with that said, I'm going to get into the first slide, which is your estimated revenue. So on the top, you have your FY25 adopted budget and FY26 proposed budget. I don't know why it's a little crooked. Yeah. So FY25 adopted budget is $28.2 million compared to $29.3 million. And what that is across is that is asking the town council for the highest possible percentage of 4%. It does not mean the town council will vote to accept the 4%, but this will be our request on March 19th if the school committee wishes to proceed with that percentage. That is a variance of $1.1 million. Followed by state aid. We were basically level with state aid. Revenue is basically your out-of-district tuition, CT tuition, and other local grants and revenue. Your gaming revenue, this is a request to the town for town capital gaming revenue. In FY25, the town was graciously granted us almost $286,000. The request this year, mostly due to inflation and a couple other technology pieces, it's about $313,000. Again, gaming revenue needs to be approved by the town council, so this is just a preliminary ask at this point in time. Medicaid, which is, I do a big question mark with this right now, what's happening at the federal government level, but we bring in about $200,000 of Medicaid every year to really offset our special ed services. So I am projecting that in the revenue this year. With that said, your total is in FY25, $35.7 million, and in FY26, almost $36 million, $35.9 and change. Any question on revenue before I go to the next slide?
I have a question for you.
Yes.
The Medicaid of $200,000 for this coming year, that you said that's something to do with the government?
That is your, yes, that is your reimbursements through special ed services. Yeah.
Right. So
the state and local health and human, it comes from the state Health and Human Services Department.
is that the portion that we're billing the state for our special ed students?
Yes.
Are there less special? I'm just wondering why it's a $350,000 drop from the year.
Because we had a little bit of fund balance remaining from FY24. We're depleting on fund balance in FY25. There will be no more fund balance. Okay. If you go to the next page, Kim, you can see the breakdown of that. Medicaid and fund balance in orange.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Brendan, could I ask you, it appears, some of these one-time influxes such as EBEC real estate, the Newport collaboration final payment, those I understand completely. The Van Buren charitable grant, is there no opportunity to reapply for Van Buren grants?
No, so Van Buren is very specific to a specific purpose.
Okay.
And we don't have that opportunity in FY26.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Just quick, Brendan, I wonder, because you and I, after the last meeting, we talked a little bit about universal pre-K and any ability that we have to forecast revenue or expenses. Do you want to talk about that now, or you want to wait? And
I can talk about it now. So the team has been looking at the universal pre-K for a couple months now. We even contacted Head Start in town to try to form a partnership. Unfortunately, we're behind a little bit because the governor's budget has a decrease of about 1.5 million right now for pre-K expansion. So we can't jump on board with those locations, those school districts that are part of that pre-K. And I would really advise against the risk at this point. The cost outweighs the revenue, in my opinion. I think this is a program you have to build through parent surveys, see what the interest is in town, and with our budget deficit, I don't think I wouldn't advise with that opportunity this year. However, I think the team is still committed to try to work with Head Start in the future. I don't think that's off the table. I just think it's off the table for this upcoming school year. And hopefully I think it's something we do need to consider in the future. I just don't think, I think the expense outweighs the revenue this upcoming school year.
Thank you.
Could I ask one more with respect to the entitlement grants from RIDE? Could you explain a little bit more, Title I, Title II, et cetera, what this is? I know your budget proposal is flat. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's preliminary right now because we're still actually, so FY25 is actually still in an amendment stage. So just based on that, it's still preliminary because your FY26 relies on your final grant funding, and your FY26 relies on your final grant funding in FY25. And then obviously, we have been advised by legal counsel to be cautious of grant funding for entitlement grants coming into FY26. So I think that's something we would have to revisit in the future as a school committee.
And that caution is primarily because the source of these funds is the federal government. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I don't know why this is everywhere. Yep.
Quick question, again. CTE tuition, how many out-of-town students are coming to the high school for our CTE program?
I think the numbers is, I don't want to give the wrong answer, so I could get back to you, but it's about eight to nine.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I can definitely get the actual number back to you.
Okay, thanks.
All right. All right. Apologize again, the slide on behind you is a little crooked, I'm not sure why, but, so the top section is FY25 appropriation. That includes state aid. Again, 34.1 million was appropriated this year by the town council. FY26 with the 4% requests from the town, it's, and the state aid increase is about a little over 1.1 million. And then you have your other revenue grants that we just covered for the almost 36 million number. As we get into it, the FY26 budget need, which is all your expenses, is about almost 37.8 million. So it's a shortfall of $1,806,135. Going to the next slide. Oh. All right. So this really shows an increase, projected increase of our adopted FY25 budget versus our projected FY26 increases. I just want to lay out where that 1.8 million essentially comes from, give or take. So you have your regular salaries and stipends, which are contractually obligated per the union contracts. It shows an increase of about 580,000. Primary benefits, which I did a deep dive on during one of our last meetings, that's about almost 500,000. To make up 1.1 million. And as I said, we can only request 1.1 million, so regular salaries and benefits has already taken up that big portion. Professional and technical services increased by 187,000. Other purchase services, such as transportation, including regular buses in-house and also statewide, is about 275,000. I do have a line item here for HVAC preventative maintenance and repairs of 85,000, and other, which is kind of just spread out across 5,000, 25,000, give or take, for a total of 153,000. In that line item. That total, all those lines total 700, so if you add up the 1.1 plus your 700, that's essentially your $1.8 million shortfall.
Brendan, it jumps out, right? The HVAC preventative maintenance, is that something perhaps we could discuss with the council as having it as part of the casino allocation?
We could, so this is, yeah, we could. This is a preventive maintenance contract.
It's
and
for the
repairs.
buildings, right?
Yeah,
And the
for
systems within?
Yes, correct. So it's for both the maintenance contract, and that would give us a little extra for repairs, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I'll just pause for a second. There is a line item detail up here, about 40 copies if anyone wants them. I think they're, yep. If anyone wants to come grab them, I'm gonna show a summary right here, but that's gonna go through our 500 lines, basically. So I will have the school committee flip to the third page, which shows your, if you look to your left, it will show you a budget review. I will be going through these line items. It just obviously can't really show 500 lines on a screen. So to get started, I will go through some of these lines, but definitely stop me and ask questions. So your first area is your personal services compensation. These are your regular salaries, substitute salaries, your longevity, that is a contract obligation, your overtime, your tutoring, your severance, your detention coverage, your AM, PM supervision at the high school and middle school levels, your RTI stipend support team, your early retirement incentive that we did include based on Peter's proposal just now, your sick payoff non-severance, classroom coverages, and then other stipends for coaches and department heads and coordinators. Based on this, you can pretty much see it's pretty much a 3.5% increase, and I do apologize, let me back up a step. So what you have here by column is you have your FY24 approved budget, you have your FY24 actuals, and then you have your FY25 projected spend. I just want to point out the FY25 projected spend, again, is our projection for this year, not our adopted budget. This is our projection for the end of the year. I think this was the best detail to give the school committee because it really shows the increases that have been occurring, as you've seen January year to date when I last presented a monthly proposal for the projected spend. And then your last comment is obviously your proposed FY26 versus your year-over-year change.
So before you go any further, the projected spend is not the FY25 approved budget?
Correct.
And what is the delta?
At Bay, it's about almost 600,000.
Okay, so in other words, you are projecting at this point a $600,000 deficit?
Correct.
For FY25, so that's just something for everyone to keep in mind. We will have, of course, separate discussions about that situation.
Yep.
Have you asked the town yet what the formatting is that they would prefer to see when we turn it in?
I have not, but I was going to share with you at the next meeting, which is on the 18th, the format that was similar to what you see in the finalized budget that the town presents, which shows FY24 approved, FY24 actuals, FY25 adopted budget, and then your FY26 proposed budget with these same percentages as you can see in the last column. It'll be formatted the same way. The only difference is the projected spend versus your adopted budget.
So very similar to how the treasurer presents it now?
Same way.
Same way?
Yep.
Okay.
Before we move on to the next page, stipends for athletic coaches, you have increasing 33%. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, so the stipend's always been close to this number. However, we've had some savings over the last couple of years. There may not be a team, there may not be a coach for that specific position. There's different changes within stipends, such as one year we have to pay out an accreditation, another year we do not. So stipends do change year to year. However, I think it's the best interest to show what the actual stipend proposal is, and if we have a savings, we have a savings, but I think we got to show the actual number.
Okay, thank you.
Brendan, just along those same lines, the variance in FY24 in stipend other, is that because it was a one-time stipend for like accreditation, you said? Like, what makes that number such a significant difference?
Yeah, I think the way the prior business manager did it, if you can see, Jocelyn, the athletic coaches is higher than the other. Somehow she kind of consolidated those, I think would be my best answer.
I remember we're discussing that. That's
yeah.
exactly what she was doing.
Yeah, so.
We were looking at it as one lump sum as opposed to having it actually broken out as it should be.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, Jocelyn, and for the rest of the school committee, this FY24 actuals is basically what will be submitted. It's part of, the audit's not done for FY24, but this is what you would see as actuals in your audit documents when that comes.
One more question is probably for Peter. RTI support team wasn't budgeted, but we had an actual. Can you just describe what that is?
Sure. At each school, we have a dedicated group of professionals who work with students who need extra support, making sure they get those support and no student slips through the cracks, and that's generated by our contract, too.
I'm going to throw it out there for the committee. Does anyone have any other questions on this page before we move forward?
I do. The employee assistance program, was that something that was supposed to be combined with the town? The employee assistance program?
What exactly? The EAP? Yes, that's on, benefits. Yeah, so are you referring to the email that Diane sent a couple of weeks ago?
Yes.
Yeah, so, excuse me. So the EAP, I guess that's a good segue to get into benefits, but I did a deep dive in benefits, so I won't go, if any questions, please say them, but to answer your question, Kim, so the chief and I worked together on coordinating a employee assistance program with a new company called Coastal. We're going to be leaving our prior partner, which is All One, and Coastal is the new vendor that is being suggested by the Rhode Island Trust, our benefits provider. And with that said, it's a major savings, a little bit to the school, but the more savings was on the town side. The town is able to now offer this EAP assistance program to the entire town body starting in July. So not only did it help us on the school side save some money, this is something we historically always had, but now it's going to be one lump sum Town of Tiverton EAP program. So this is a great collaboration with the town.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just one more question from me. The numbers that you present here are with current staffing levels, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so just understand that, as we go through this, the next version of this will have to reflect any decisions we make with regard to staffing.
So I'm going to go to page 2, and this is probably one of the bigger jumps you're going to see, and it has to do with professional and technical service, which to me is essentially our special education services on the top. So it starts with speech therapists and goes all the way down to student assistants, and there's a couple more down the line, but these are basically all your special ed services with bus assistant and monitors built in. I call out bus assistants and monitors because, again, that is a preliminary number as we're still out to bid with our transportation contracts, with our transportation bid, excuse me. There is web-based supplement instruction program, and I will highlight that is a small increase, but it's not so much an increase from expense. It has to do with when I came on board, I looked at the way things were being coded, and we did change some things. We did change some coding around where a former web-based supplement instructional program might have been coded there, but now it's coded in a different UCOA account. There was an increase for inflation costs, really, but again, Danny Andrade had presented that during his technology budget, so I won't go too much further into that. And then you got your auditing services, you got your legal services, you got your health service providers, you got your police and fire, which is our SRO, your physician and dentists that do exams during the school. You got your Medicaid claims provider, that's essentially expense to receive the Medicaid claims support that I just mentioned, the $200,000. And then you got your referees, your data processing, which is really our payroll processing service fees. You got your other technical services, and then very small costs at the end. And you can see this was an increase of about 11.38% over the FY25 projected spend. Any questions within this area?
I have a couple. Other technical services is showing a 23% increase. Is that attributed to one thing or just overall increases in all of our?
That goes to the same comment as web-based. We did some recoding, reclassifications of coding, and then the small uptick in different for inflation costs.
So where is it all being taken from? Because so far I've seen 2 increases and no decreases.
It's going to be taken from really the last page, which is a technical related hardware and tech software I'll get to on the last page.
Okay. And then my other question is with regard to the SRO, has the town requested this increase?
Nope, this is a traditional increase for 3% that we do. However, that could change in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Brendan,
Yes.
while it's not a lot of money, it's something that I just have to ask about. Catering/food reimbursement.
Sorry, Kim, can you repeat that? Sorry.
Catering/food reimbursement,
Correct.
what is that?
That's basically for different, that could be for a meeting where we're hosting a, for instance, we had a new payroll system, and I brought all the, all the admin assistants to the principals, and I basically bought their lunch because they came during their lunch period. So this is ways to incentivize employees to come to these different programs for either professional development, development of new systems we're implementing, etc. That's usually the best time to have these individuals come to these services. And then obviously that doesn't make up the full 4,000, but that's the first example that comes to mind. Yeah, and there's also, there's food and catering expenses with high school graduation. I'm trying to think, what's the honor society? Yeah, awards night, that type of stuff.
Thank you.
And to back up to the line just above that, Brendan, shipping and postage, we expecting more volume, or is this based upon?
That's based on the post office's increased rate.
Which is why I do everything electronically.
Yeah. Unfortunately, for instance, we, have to send out healthcare forms and, tax forms if they prefer that service, it's that type of stuff, and along with many other postage.
Anyone else? Okay.
All right. Your next section is your property services. This is your trash disposal services, your ground maintenance, mostly for the high school and middle school athletic fields, your non-technology related maintenance, Your maintenance and repairs, we have quite a few different accounts. One for fixtures, text-related hardware, electrical, HVAC I just spoke to a little bit, plumbing, and then you got your utilities, additional utilities, water, telephone, internet connectivity, and then rental of equipment and vehicles. I will highlight rental and equipment vehicles, because this is a little bit of an increase, but it has to do with our spending freeze. We're trying to keep that as low as possible based on our FY25 condition. However, what this rental equipment and vehicles is all our copiers. And then if we have to rent a boom to fix a parking lot light, we have to rent those type of equipment to fix facilities, go on a roof, whatever the case may be. That's probably the biggest outlier in the mix. There is little increases, obviously, in maintenance and repairs, but I still think with the aging facilities, I still think these numbers are relatively low, in my opinion. But unfortunately, during this budget cycle, try to propose the lowest possible option I could propose. And again, to highlight the total of the FY25 projected spend in FY26, I will say with the spending freeze, we obviously are trying to keep this as low as possible, but also the town was gracious enough to grant us district-wide heating and the gaming revenue, which is better referred to as capital. So that's why you see $0 being spent in FY25 versus $85,000 through the HVAC preventative and maintenance and repairs request.
And again, that could potentially be something we broach the subject with the town council to fund from casino gaming as well. Would you agree?
Yep, that is something I would propose during a joint session with the town council.
Okay.
Any other questions before going into the next line item? Nope, hearing none. So next is our purchase services. This is what's really driven over the last couple of years, as you can see, and this really has a big part to do with our FY25 deficit. So you have just to highlight a couple lines, you have your transportation state aid, but if you skip the transportation contractors, which is your regular buses, athletics, and those type of things, if you go to your cybersecurity and service management, which ends in 112, 113, that's really your statewide transportation cost. Right now, I estimate it at $952,000. That could easily drive up in the future. This is one of the variables that I say is very preliminary at this point in time, even in FY25, as I spoke to this before. So that could easily drive, I would say, if I had to give a range, I would say 950 to $1 million, to keep that in mind. Jumping back to 55111, which is your transportation contractors. Again, I gave a presentation on transportation, but that's your regular buses, your athletics, your late buses, your buses to what we have to provide to the private school in our region, et cetera. And that's using a almost 6% rate. We did make some changes to our bus contract that will save a couple dollars, so that's why it's a little less than 6% at this point in time. But again, that number could grow. The bid is still 2 weeks out, and that's just accepting of the bid, the bids that come in, and then we have to actually accept a provider. I am happy to report that about 6 vendors showed up to a non-mandatory bid on transportation. That is great considering we've always had 1 vendor show up and bid in the past. So it's very, I'm a little optimistic that we had 6 vendors show up to a non-mandatory bid. And then you got your usual costs, which again, I have not firmed up a number with the Rhode Island Trust. It actually won't have a number till probably the end of April. We just received a document that we have to fill out with all information, so it's very preliminary right now, but that's your property and liability insurance, your student accident insurance. And then we do have advertising costs and printing. That's essentially just covering the cost of our bid documents that could go in bidnet.com, it could go in Providence Journal, et cetera. And then you have your out-of-district costs. This is another cost driver that could occur in the future. Right now, we have it at $933,000, but based on our student enrollment population next year, we could have additional out-of-district costs that could drive it up $1 million or a little over $1 million to keep in the back pocket. Then you have your tuition to private sources. I do want to say your tuition to private sources and out-of-state is kind of historically, essentially the two line items you would see, which equals $2.7 million. Sarah spoke a little bit about it, this out-of-district placement costs, or tuition, I should say. So that's historically your two numbers, but it is broken out per UCOA data, so I followed suit with that. And then you got your tuition to charter schools, your dual enrollment, and your basically your mileage for employees. So you can see a light uptick from a projected FY25 to FY26 of a little over 1%. Any questions on this area?
Has anyone heard anything about the state? They're working on the statewide transportation. Is that, anything come back on that yet?
So
Those meetings continue.
They do?
Yeah, they just had another meeting yesterday.
Okay.
And you know, we did provide, Jocelyn and I did provide public input at their meeting last month to advocate on behalf of Tiverton, because as you can see, these transportation costs are getting really to be a significant portion of the budget, and anything we're paying out in transportation is not going to education itself, right? It's just a supporting service. With that said, yesterday's meeting, Dr. Carreno from RIDE led a discussion with that group over the quote-unquote statewide regions that they currently employ. Right now, I think there's 5 or 6 of them. And the way statewide transportation, I've learned a lot just watching them on TV. The way statewide transportation works is, you know, you can bus students within a region. If a student needs to go from point A to point B within that region, they're entitled to that transportation. It could be several miles outside of their own district, but they're entitled to that transportation. So right now, that was yesterday. They will continue to meet, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, they have a goal of within the next few months to wrap things up and make their recommendations.
Great.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So jumping to our supplies and materials area. So you have your general supplies and materials. This is probably the biggest line outside of utilities in this area, but you know, again, just think about it, your paper, ink, your toner, and then the supplies to every teacher. This is a little jump from FY25, and again, that has to do with the spending freeze in FY25, along with some additional needs the teachers need in the future, because in my opinion, when you take away spending in one year, you need to recoup a little bit of that spending in the following year, basically. So following down the row, it's you have your uniform and apparel supplies. Essentially, this is our uniforms for our Council 94 employees. Your graduation supplies, again, that increase just has to do with inflation, basically. Your medical supplies, again, inflation. Athletic supplies, again, inflation. Your natural gas, which I did a presentation on, we were able to get a better supply rate, so that is going down a tad. Your gasoline, this is the gas we get from the town garage to gas up our 4 vehicles that we have for the school department. Your diesel, fuel, and propane, which is little cost. Your vehicle maintenance, supplies, parts. This is basically essentially parts for our snow blowers and our plows and our tractors to cut the grass. You got your fuel oil. Fuel oil was, I think we're paying $2.69 this year. I did increase that I might need to increase that a little more, basically what's happening on the federal government level with tariffs, but that's conversation for another day. And then you have your electricity. As you know, we have received a lower supplier rate, so that is some savings. You have your plumbing and heating supply costs, your electrical supplies, your custodial supplies, textbooks, library books, some additional web-based software and database library purchases. It's basically our library software purchases, and your technology-related supplies. Again, very, very little increase, about 2.57%. Any questions in this area?
I guess the question I would have is in relation to textbooks and library books, et cetera. Help me understand, every student in our district has a Chromebook, and a lot of the assignments, et cetera, are being done online, but does this indicate that we're also supplementing with textbooks throughout, or have we seen any kind of reduction in the purchasing of textbooks over the years? And if you can't answer it, just say it.
No. You can probably answer that a little better than me.
So I think if we went back to before we went to a digital conversion and one-to-one, if you look at the textbook line then, you'd see a drastic drop from where we are now. Typically what we do with textbooks, we just buy a classroom set so the teacher has it available to them. And then another unfunded mandate that we're facing is the required of teaching civics at the high school level. That's going to require some electronic and textbooks there too. So you'd have to go back about 8 years to really see that drop.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. All right, so then I'll go to your property. You have your equipment, and essentially, this $11,500 has to do with, really it's special ed equipment. We do have some equipment costs coming in for equipment services we have to provide to our special ed service. It's really mostly our homebound students. And then you have your technology-related hardware. Again, FY25 to 26 has to do with, mostly has to do with the spending freeze, not so much an uptick in related hardware. And then you have your tech software, and then your sewer system cost. I will go right into the next section, since it's only a couple, but you have your professional and professional organization fees. You have your other dues and fees. And then you have your claims and settlement. What this claim and settlement is, this is a joint discussion with the town council, but based on preliminary discussions for our FY25 deficit, we potentially have a payment plan back to the town council for that deficit. So I am putting a placeholder right now in our budget of $75,000. Just real quick to cap off the grand total, you can see in FY24 actuals, we spent almost $37.2 million. FY27 projected spent is $36.3 million. And your FY26 proposed budget is almost $37.8 million. If you looked at your projected versus your proposed, it's basically a $1.4 million increase from FY25 projected to your FY26, which is a little less than 4%.
Could I get confirmation that tech-related hardware and software would be part of the capital request?
Yes, not every line, but most of those lines, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Brenda, did I hear you say we owe the town $75,000?
So right now, no, because no decision's been made by either body. This was preliminary discussion that there's a potential of how do we, this was with the AG's office, and so when you meet with the AG, it's the chairman of this board, the president of town council, Peter, myself, the attorneys, and the town administrator, interim town administrator. So preliminary discussions is we have to come up with a, basically a game plan of how we're going to fight the deficit.
Okay.
So I don't want to get too much more into that, but that's basically where do we have to come up with a decision by both bodies of how we're going to handle the deficit. So right now, again, I'm just putting a placeholder for that.
And this year's deficit?
This year's, yes, FY25's deficit.
That's fine. I just thought it was, we had talked about getting rebates back from RIDE and spending those before we had them. I was wondering where that showed up. I thought that might have been the $75,000.
So when you what do you mean, the Medicaid rebates? Is that what you're talking?
On capital,
No, that wouldn't be part of our
construction,
operating.
stuff like that.
Oh, the reimbursements. No, that reimbursement actually goes to the town council. That's part of the gaming revenue. So we have to go to the town council. That's a totally separate account.
Okay.
That's, we do get reimbursements, but it's basically ran by the town council. We have to ask for approval to use that money.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any additional questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Andrade, for your presentation. It was very detailed.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Well, just one more thing. I just wanted to show the last page, which is it's on the screen as well, but real quick, this is not your traditional Rhode Island UCOA hierarchy, parent accounts, whatever you want to refer to it as, but I did break it out. I think this is the best representation of our budget here in Tiverton, and you can see I broke it down by basically a lot of our mandated costs that's unfunded, and then also really our costs that we have no control over, such as transportation, insurance, textbooks, utilities, personnel services, et cetera. So this gives you kind of a percentage breakdown of those different areas. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. So looking ahead, we will need to whittle this number down to the quote-unquote 4% max number as we prepare our budget request to go to the town. And our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. So I think, you know, you're going to have a lot to work on. I don't, the school, do you already have ideas for how you're going to get this number down?
I think I heard all that question, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Tough.
No,
hard
it
of
was
hearing.
it was great. It was our first opportunity to look at the line level detail. I think we're all, I think the important thing to note right now is that we are, the line level budget is 1.8 million over what we can legally ask for from the town. So what that means is that we have very little, like none, no choice, but to find ways to cut our expenses. And that can come from a number of places, some larger than others. Obviously, with those kind of numbers, the bulk of those cost-cutting measures will come through staff layoffs. It's just no way around it. So, are there anyone else want to add any commentary there?
Just procedurally, so our budget's due the 19th, so we'll have to have it balanced on the 18th. Okay, thank you.
That is correct. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for your patience this evening. We'll now move into agenda item 5. Consideration and possible votes on the elementary reconfiguration options. So what we have this evening is a presentation by both Dr. Sanchioni and Mr. Andrade, and so we'll go through that presentation before we take any discussion.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm just waiting for Danny to bring up the slides that goes with this. Okay, so at our last meeting, the school committee charged us with presenting to you 3 options, both giving you the educational analysis and the financial analysis, which is what we're going to provide to you this evening.
And so the way we're going to look at this, we'll start by just showing you our current enrollment, February, March. We'll focus on March, which is where we are right now. So that's standard form that we show you on a monthly basis. Option 1 was K to 3 at Ranger, PK to 3 at Picasset, and grade 4 at the middle school. We'll then analyze option 2, K to 2 at Ranger, PK, and PK meaning preschool, and kindergarten, and 3-4 at Picasset. And option 3, PK, kindergarten at Fort Barton, 1-4 at Picasset and Ranger. I'll go through those options with the educational considerations, and then I'll turn it over to Brendan. He'll go through the consolidation options, those 3 options from a financial comparison, and then we'll show you the transition program that we'd like to bring back into the district and the financial impact that that program has. So starting with our current enrollment, and I'll just focus on the bottom of this chart, which is March, and the green boxes, and just speak to the green boxes, and they're pretty much the same, but if you can only see the top of it, that currently the high school has 429 students enrolled, the middle school has 507, Ranger has 215, Fort Barton has 133, and Picasset has 213. So current enrollment.
Madam Chair, do you want us to ask questions as we are on the sheets, or would you prefer that we wait until at the end? I will do either.
I would like us to, if you have questions, ask as we're on the specific sheet so that we all have it top of mind.
The only thing, Dr. Sanchioni, a parent asked me at the last meeting that could you let us know what the capacity of each of those buildings are? So the high school capacity, 429 students, what's the capacity? Roughly.
Yeah, I think
800?
800, and I think it's about the same for the middle school.
Middle school, 800. And then each of the elementary schools, so Ranger, 215, Fort Barton, 133, Picasset, 213. What's the capacity?
We were using 250.
About 250 for each school. Okay, thank you.
Okay. That being some background information, we'll go on to the first option. Okay, so this has kindergarten through 3rd grade at Ranger, our preschool programs in 3rd grade at Picasset and grade 4 at the middle school. I'm going to focus on the chart at the bottom first to give you an idea how this is broken out and give you sort of a look at the class sizes. So we'd have to offer 5 sections of each grade level next year, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. So that requires a 3-2 split. You don't want students to be changing schools during the year, so you have to have 3 grade levels so they can progress through the schools. So what we've got here is 3 sections at Ranger, 2 at Picasset with the 2 preschools. So Ranger would have 12 academic classes, Picasset would have 10. The total population at Ranger would be 240. The population at Picasset would be 195, and then the middle school would pick up the 4th grade with a total population of 619. So as you think about this option, some of the considerations we want to bring forth to you is all the current Fort Barton students, K2, or next year's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade would move to Ranger. They'd move to Ranger with their classmates and so forth. This option allows for space for special education programs needed at both schools. It allows for enrollment increases or decreases. As you can see in the class sizes there, there's space there to absorb more students, or certainly if there was a decrease. If this plan was accepted, there is a carefully developed plan to move the 4th grade to TMS. This plan was created by teachers and the administrators. It includes committees. It includes our chairperson would be our assistant superintendent, Sarah Krager, and has many variables, and we look forward to presenting that to you should this consideration be the option. This option also allows for the art, music rooms, and the library to continue to be used for those subjects.
Before we go any further, I do want to ask those in the audience, is there a problem with us sitting in front of this screen? Are you having any difficulty? Okay. Because I'm happy for us to move while Dr. Sanchioni makes his presentation. If it makes it easier for people to see, we have it on paper, so.
Madam Chair, would you like me to continue, or did you want to continue? Okay, so Danny, if we can move to the next option, option 2, which has kindergarten, first and second grade at Ranger, with our preschool and third and fourth grade at Pecasset. The population at Ranger under this model will be 294, population at Pecasset would be 254. You can see the class sizes as we're predicting them. Some of the considerations should you consider this option. With 15 classrooms at Ranger, this would require turning the library into 2 classrooms, so it would require significant construction cost. At Pecasset and Ranger, the art and music rooms would need to be used. Teachers would have to prep outside their classrooms when art and music is taking place within their classroom. Art, music, and library would be on a cart, which requires a significant change in the curriculum that we currently offer. On days that the students have art, music, and library, they would remain in their classroom except for lunch and recess. On the positive side, this does allow grade level teachers to work together in what we call professional learning communities. And by having all the grade levels together, you can easily balance class size and easily adjust for enrollment increases and decreases. It possibly splits families and possibly has transportation concerns for people who live on the far end of the town and having to travel to Pecasset. All grade level students would be together, so I've emphasized that could be a positive. However, this does require a lot of movement in the district. So, for example, the current Pecasset and Fort Barton kindergarten first grade students would have to move to Ranger, and the current Ranger and Fort Barton second and third grade would have to move to Pecasset. So this option requires a lot of student movement and significant rehab at Ranger to produce 2 additional classrooms. Okay, Danny, let's take it to option 3. So option 3 was to have the pre-K and the K at Fort Barton, and then to have Ranger and Pecasset serve as 1-4 schools. So if you look at the chart at the bottom again, we're showing you what the pre-K and the K would look like at Fort Barton, and then the split between Ranger and Pecasset, 5 sections, so you'd have to have 3 at one school, 2 at the other, so some predicted class sizes there. Fort Barton would have 134 students, Ranger would have 253, and Pecasset would have 158. Some of the considerations as you look at this model, it does require reopening Fort Barton as a fully functioning school, so that will require some additional staff members. Secretary, custodian, administrator. It would also mean providing lunch, and transportation costs then require the elimination of other critically needed positions to balance the budget. In this model, all the current Fort Barton students in K2 could move to Ranger, except for grade 3, which is next year's grade 4. At Fort Barton, there are 40 students there. You couldn't move 40 students into Ranger, so that 4th grade class, next year's 4th grade class, would have to be split between the 2 elementary schools. As you can see in this model here, the kindergarten is removed from the elementary community and then adds another year of transition. It does allow space for our special education programs needed at all the schools, and it does allow for enrollment increases and/or decreases. So those are the 3 options. Those are the educational considerations for each one. I'm going to close before I pass this off to Mr. Andrade to look at the financial aspect. And just want to remind the community that, you know, within all this consideration and trying to do what's best for our students, which is always our North Star and what we try to do best, that I don't want it to be lost that we are going to lay off 18 of our colleagues. No matter what model you choose tonight, 18 of our highly trained people we've hired and invested in who do great work here are going to be laid off as a result of this deficit. There's no solution to avoiding 18 layoffs. And that needs to be strongly considered, because in the end, you know, it's about revenue. And when you don't have the revenue, you have to make these tough decisions that impact a lot of different people, but no more than, you know, 16 were laid off last year and another 18 this year. And I just don't want that to be lost on ours. So with that, I turn it over to Mr. Andrade, and he'll give you the financial options for the 3 options.
So as you can see on the screen here, we show option 1, what that entails, option 2, what that entails, and option 3. As I just presented, we do have a budget shortfall of $1.8 million. And basically going down the left side, these are the type of positions that we would have to make the tough decision on having a reduction 4 to hopefully get it closer to the remaining shortfall we have. So as you can see in option 1, we would be reducing a custodian, and what that is 1.5 FTEs at the rate of $76,603. Again, this is just their wages and potentially stipends, and then your estimated benefits is towards the bottom, just to point that out. But going across, again, option 2, you would have 1.5 FTEs custodians. If you were to keep Fort Barton open in option 3 for pre-K and kindergarten, we wouldn't be able to reduce all our the 1.5 custodians. It would go down to 0.5 FTEs. Across, going back to option 1, this would keep a nurse at 0.4 FTE. Going to option 2, we would keep we would be reducing a nurse 0.4. Going to option 2, we would be reducing a nurse by 1. And then option 3, we would need to maintain a nurse at Fort Barton Elementary School for pre-K and kindergarten. Going to the next line, you have your admin clerk. It would be reducing 1 across the board on each option. Principal, 0.6 FTE across the board on each option. Elementary teachers is part of the consolidation. This would be 3 across the board. Elementary specialists is part of the consolidation. This would be 1 across the board. SEL and social workers, again, part of the elementary consolidation. This would be 2 across the board. You would have your part-time teacher assistants. This would be 3 across the board, again, for your elementary consolidation. And then middle school and high school teachers, 5 across the board, and these would just be identified additional reduction cuts we need to make to get closer to the reduction we need to make for our shortfall of $1.8 million. And then you got your estimated benefits for those salary reductions above, your additional identified cuts, and then your transition program savings of $135,000, as we'll get to in the next slide. So as you can see across the board, option 1 presents 17.6 FTEs at $1,647,805. Option 2 is a little over 18 FTEs at $1,697,435. Option 3 is 16.1 FTEs at $1,520,327. As you can see in the last line towards the bottom in red, we have a remaining balance for additional reductions to be identified. Across the board, option 1, $158,000, option 2, $109,000, and option 3, $286,000. Just to highlight the final page of this PowerPoint, go to the next one, so we can let the committee come back on. So this is your transition program, which is your 18 to 22-year-olds. This is a potential savings. Right now in the current school year, we have 2 students. We're projected to have 6 in the upcoming 2025-2026 school year. Cost per student currently is about $43,000. We have a 4% increase projected at $44,720. The total cost this school year is about $86,000, and next year we're projecting $268,000. The proposal to bring in this in-house, you would need 1 teacher at an estimated cost of $80,000. 2 teacher assistants will need to train to obtain job coaching certifications using Title II funding, but that would be a cost of $50,000. We will be using the van to transport students, so we have minimal gas mileage estimate there. We will need materials. We're hoping to use IDA entitlement grant funding. And then you do need equipment. Luckily, Fort Barton already has a microwave, toaster, refrigerator, cooking tools in the cafeteria. We would have to pursue a washer and dryer. Obviously, we would try for a donation first or buy used next. And then we would have about $5,000 for mileage and protection. So FY 25 to 26, currently in the budget, we have $268,320 for out-of-district cost, out-of-district placement costs. By bringing this in, it would result in a savings of $135,000, as you see highlighted in the bottom right in yellow. So with that said,
I'm up here, so can I start with my question? Madam Chair, may I? Okay. Brendan, so projected FY26 budget shortfall, $1,806,135. I just want to, that assumes we get all of our federal aid. That assumes 4% from the council, and that does not it assumes 775,000 payback of this year's deficit. Yes?
Correct.
So I guess my point being that's the low, that's the floor, and it's
Yeah.
likely to go higher.
Correct. Also consideration of town capital approval of 312,000.
Oh, assuming that they're going to assume that.
It's accepted.
Yes, okay. Can you tell me why under option 3, the additional identified cuts, I mean, it's not huge, but why it's 56 versus 23?
Say that one more. Option 3, Deb, you said what?
Option 3, additional identified cuts, 56 versus 23. Is that because of the staffing we have to bring back?
No, that's mostly got to do with if we keep Fort Barton open, we would still have to pay potentially pay a stipend per the union contract. I did set some savings by the building not having 100% use. Obviously, you would save some electricity, very minimal, but you would save some electricity and gas. Obviously, we would keep it on the low end. We have LED lighting in there that wouldn't be turned on during, as we're using today. And then we would need some more additional supplies for potentially library books or whatever else we need to potentially set it up.
That's all I had. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Do any other members of the committee wish to ask any questions with regard to the options at this time?
Just have one question.
Sure.
Dr. Sanchioni, should we realize any potential savings from retirements that we don't know of yet because you just disincentive, could that or may that help with reducing the number of teachers, saving some jobs or a job? Could that be applied to that area?
Ms. Paley, that's the exact reason why we want to offer this and hopefully generate enough to bring back a critically needed staff position.
Thank you.
But at the bottom, we're not even balanced.
Well, we're still short too. Right?
I told a parent I would ask this question. I'm kind of glad that Mrs. Giannini's here to ask this too. She's concerned if option 1 goes through where the kids are going to Tiverton Middle School, how would that affect early risers?
Yes.
They're going to follow the middle school time, start time? If fourth grade
To
moves
be
the middle school?
determined, but in both options, I know we have a plan for early risers.
Yeah, I would assume that we will obviously accommodate them. I'll just have to have staff earlier in the morning. But I'm sure we'll accommodate for early risers.
And the program right now, is it just a fourth grade?
We do K through 8.
Oh, K through 8, okay.
Yes. Yeah, the middle school kids, I have some middle school kids, depending on where they're located. I have a few at Picasso that will go to, actually, they all pick up at all 3 now. So I have a small program at Fort Barton because there's not as many children enrolled. Ranger School, I have quite a few middle school kids that take the bus, so the bus will come in, pick them up, and take them to school. Same thing at Picasso.
So the program isn't housed at the middle school. They would be bused from another location.
They get bused from the elementary school, so they all get dropped off at their elementary school that they attended prior to going to middle school, and then the bus comes through for the run that they would normally do in that area, and pick them up, and they would take the bus to the middle school.
Okay, great. So there won't be any major changes.
Nope.
Perfect. Dr. Sanchioni, when we toured the middle school, I think we were more focused on where the fourth grade would be housed. And I didn't even think about this until today. I'm kind of concerned about the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. They're going to be in the second floor. So that's going to add an additional 100 students upstairs if this option 1 goes through. How is that going to work out? Is there enough room for those students?
Yeah, the middle school has a number of classrooms that were available. The only, in full transparency though, there are science labs on the first floor that those students would have to take sciences, but they're located away from where the fourth graders will be.
Would those be the ones on the hallway that you would go to head toward the cafeteria? Is that where those science rooms are?
Well, they're on both hallways. They would be on the hallway where the fifth grade is located.
And I did have some questions about the transition program. You're going to use a van. Will that be to take the students to job sites, or is that going to be to pick them up at their house? How's that
No,
gonna work?
once they get to the location, we then take them to their job sites. That's what the van's for.
Okay, so they would be taking alternative transportation. It would just be, okay. And what if a teacher or a TA doesn't want to drive that van?
That's stipulated in the job descriptions that we'll write for those positions.
They have to, okay. And then I know that the high school's using it's a minibus, not really a van, that they're using that a lot too. How is that going to be shared amongst Fort Barton's transition program?
The minivans use it at the high school mostly for athletics after school. There is some during the school usage. However, we'll just have to coordinate that when the van's available. The priority would be the transition program.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure about that. And these estimated costs for teachers and TAs, is that just their salaries only? $80,000 for a teacher and $50,000 for 2 TAs? Or is that also including benefits?
Yeah, it's pretty much both. It depends where they come in at the level. So this is just a basic estimate right now, depending who, because as you know, someone in right now who's a teacher in, say, the high school could bid on the job. So it's really a basic an estimate right now. So I would say both. Potentially, if you say level 5, you could say it's a salary plus benefits a little bit.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Do any other members of the committee have questions?
Brendan, just a question on your slide, the 0.4 FTE for nurse.
Yes.
Is that because in option 1, we would need additional nurse for the middle school?
Yes, that would be putting 0.6 FTEs for assistance to the middle school.
0.4.
Has anyone checked the mandated on the nurse? The mandate for, because I had received an email today that it's 1 nurse per 750 students that's mandated. So we may not need a nurse.
We may not need a nurse.
Is there 700, well, there'll be 619 students in the middle school.
Right.
So you only need 1 nurse for 750 students. So we may not need that nurse.
Part of it, I think, is also you can count numbers, or you can count need. And when we look at the need of the students there for all the medical needs and so forth, we think that adding a little extra support there would be necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have questions?
Okay. Just a point of clarification. So we have the 3 options in front of us. No matter what, we still have remaining to balance.
That's
so
correct.
That's it. You got it.
This is going to be ongoing for quite
That'll
some
be
time.
outside of this discussion tonight, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to, and we're not posted for additional public input this evening. However, I would like to invite members of the audience to speak. I will ask, however, that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you exercise this invitation to speak one time only in the interest of time so that we can continue with our discussion. Thank you.
3 minutes, Diane, did I hear that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much. I would like to propose that we take option 2 off the table. It does seem like it's the option that is not going to work for most of our kids, our staff members. I think we've heard a lot of comments around why option 2 just isn't a good fit. I would like to think more about option 3. I know that there is a bigger gap there, but we're only talking $127,000 away from that target. I would try to think creatively. I know personally, one area that I'm looking really closely at is online programming. We spend a lot of money on online programming. When you think about the amount of time that kids are on devices, it is a huge problem in today's society. It's impacting their focus, their attention, their memory skills. I really think, unfortunately, the world we live in, they're on tablets, phones, video games. We all do our best to limit it, but it is a problem. And when they come to school, they're also on for hours. I think that thinking about some of those online programs could be places where we could save money. So that's one suggestion. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. You're looking for the financial comparisons? This one? Okay. We have another speaker.
Hi, how are you? Hi. So my question is, if we go with option 3, are we able to move the special education adult students to the middle school as we were going to do so with the 4th grade students?
That is a question I will refer to our superintendent about because it's not part of this particular documentation.
Right. But it was just a thought that I had.
And you're talking about the transition program, the 18 to 22-year-olds? Yeah, so we would look at maybe using the second floor of Fort Barton for that program. The students really aren't there. They check in, they get in the van, they're off to the work site areas.
Right. My question is, though, why can't we utilize the space that we would in the middle school to still bring that money? So option 3, and still bring those students
We could look at that.
To the town, because that would be a cost savings, correct? Because we're actively keeping all the schools open, which again, Fort Barton parent, and I understand that we got to cut costs, but if we're able to keep the school open, keep all the students together, 1 through 4, and still bring that transitional program into the high school because we've already dedicated the space for the 4th graders.
Right. Absolutely. We're going to bring that program back. So I guess the final destination can be determined. We're going to bring that program back.
Okay.
That's a great question. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, Susan Ferry, 44 Border Lane, Tiverton. Turn that off. My big concern is having the 5th grade. The 5th grade is already at the middle school, and my son, I was told, would be cocooned there. And it doesn't happen right now. Art is upstairs, then he's downstairs, then he's upstairs in the 8th grade hallway, then he's somewhere else. So he's all over the school. And I worry that my 3rd grader who's going to go to 4th is going to have the same problem. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to solve that. And my other concern is recess, that K through 6 is supposed to have 20 consecutive minutes. And what are they going to do about recess at the middle school? Lunch laps are fine for older children. That is not a 4th grade option. So I hope we figure that one out. And then I'd like to be a part if there's any committees for suggestions on how to transition the 4th grade, since I'm assuming that's what's going to happen, unfortunately.
Can I just ask your last name? I didn't get it.
Oh, Susan Ferry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker? Thank you.
Hi, Amanda Gomes.
I was just curious if you could share class sizes, the number of classrooms needed, and if they will all fit within the 12 classrooms of each school.
I believe those were shown within the first 3 slides that we went through that we left the stage for. So as an example, under option 1, you would have 5 total sections of kindergarten, 3 at Ranger, 2 at Pecasset, mainly with 20 children in each section. Is that I mean, that was laid out in these slides. Is that what your question is about?
There's option 1. Yeah, and there's the classes on the bottom. Option 2.
Hi, good evening. Jera Camisho, 27 Ridgeside Lane. Man, it's a tough decision. 2 is out. I'm sorry. It's crazy that's on the table. I implore you to really give option 3 a real consideration. I think it would keep a lot of families happy. I think you need to think about losing more families. I have a pulse on this. My kids are in sports. I have a 4th grader currently. I have a 6th grader at TMS, and I'm hearing a lot of scuttle of kids getting pulled. And that is revenue. And I really think option 3 would be a great option to keep 1 through 4 in Pecasset and Ranger, pre-decay in Fort Barton. We still have that bond. So I implore you to consider that for $127,000 we're talking here. If you lose more kids, what's that going to be? So, thank you.
Melissa Medeiros, 823 Crandall Road. I also want to propose that we take a closer look at option 3. Before this, we really didn't have those numbers. So when I got up here and said that I would, get behind 4th grade at the middle school, even though I really strongly feel that it's not a good idea, in my mind I was thinking that there was going to be a lot more savings than $127,000. I think that if we're going to take a look at preschool, universal preschool, and trying to build that in the future, then this could also allow for revenue, maybe not for next year, but in the coming years. And if we can find a way to keep our 4th graders at elementary school, again, without a huge differential, I think that's the smartest option and the one that the community is going to feel the most comfortable with, and will keep our students here. Thank you.
Hi, Derek D'Souza, 39 Blossom Lane. So one quick question. Does any of these options, when you look at the savings, take into account the transportation expenses? Because if you look at option 2, you're potentially going to have kids in the same neighborhood going to 3 schools, opposed to only elementary and middle, which was just something I noticed. I didn't know if that was taken into account. But I think at the end of the day, this is a decision we have to make now for this school year, but I think, the first comment that was made today was thinking longer term. And I think this town, which I've only been part of the public school system here for a few years with my kids, prior to that they were private, and I pulled them into the public school system because of budget issues there. Go figure, I have it here too. But I think the thing that we need to remember is we have a little bit of a branding issue, and that maybe is my marketing background. This school committee, not faulting your own, you have some tough decisions, and this parent community are fighting at all ends. Social media is showing it. People are seeing it. You're not going to come buy a house in Tiverton seeing this disarray. We have to work together to get this fixed, or we're not going to have a future for these school systems. And when I look at these options and think Melissa just said $127,000. If I think about if I was buying a house and I was trying to figure out where I'm moving to because I just moved to the state, and I was picking school districts, and I see a town that you look up anything about these schools, you're going to see this argument this array in the town. You're going to see a fourth grade at a Tiverton middle school going, well, I wouldn't want that for my kids because that's my first reaction to that. Tiverton would not be the town I would pick. And I would go to my neighboring towns or neighboring private schools or neighboring Catholic schools. So I think although there is a bigger savings with option 1 or 2, the $120,000 difference for option 3, while it will be hard, and I looked at your budget, and I want to pick it apart a little more, but your increases aren't that much for what you're expecting. I actually think it's still short. It's only $120,000, but in the long run, I think we're going to have a bigger problem with this fourth grade being at the middle school, our worst building, in my opinion, in this town, putting more kids there, that I think you will actually reap benefits with option 3, although we have to still find $120,000. I get it. That's not easy. Not sure where we're going to find it, but I think you're going to have an issue with going forward as we think forward. Thank you.
Thank
you. Yes, good evening, everyone. Sally Black, 64 Broadview Drive. My mother moved to this town in 1915. I love this town. I love these schools, all 5 of them. 6 children went through, all graduate of college, 4 grandchildren now. I can't say enough about who we are. And let's stay that way. Let's all get together, the schools, town council, everybody, all the citizens. I'm not up there, but I'm still connected. And the phone calls I've gotten about 4th grade in the middle school, no. The world is a mess, we know that. The country's in crisis. Let's keep Tiverton together. Let's keep our kids together. Let's keep our parents. If you think you want ACLU teachers, you're going to need more. If you fracture everybody, you have kids going here and there and everywhere, they won't know where to pick them up and drop them off. When we did that heating thing, I got calls. One parent, just quickly, I'll tell you, she had 3 children. She dropped one at Ranger, and they said the parents couldn't go in. The kid was crying. He said, that's not my school. Where are you sending me? Then the other 2 were in the car crying because the little one was crying. Then the mother started crying. Everybody's crying. That's not what we want. I know it's tough to be up there. I was up there 16 years. Many years we got $1, and we made it through. And I know you guys can do this. I know you can make it through. I waited to watch the difference. If it was huge, I understand. It's not that big. We need to keep everybody together, and please, option 3 is
to go to a music room, to only staying within their classroom for the entire day would be devastating to them. Listen, I don't want to go to the middle school any more than anyone else, and this directly affects me and my students going forward. But at the same time, I can't in good faith, I went through COVID with my students not being able to move outside of the classroom, and I saw the effect directly with them. So as much as it pains me to have to say it, and I guess I started my career at the middle school and I'm circling back around to the middle school, but I need that consideration to be heard because students not being able to move and being in a classroom for the entire day is not healthy for them either. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lauren Crawford. I'm at 68 South Avenue in Tiverton. Excuse me. Previously someone spoke about having their child go to Portsmouth 4th grade in the middle school and how they had a wonderful time. They recently, right before COVID, got rid of that. So I think that speaks for itself. If you are a leader in the community or education like Portsmouth is, and you realize that 4th grade in middle school is not working, and you get rid of it, why are we even considering it? I moved here to Tiverton because of Fort Barton, because I had a young family, because of the school that it offered my child. Being a blue ribbon school is something that I'm so proud of. To know that's going to go away breaks my heart, because I know the teachers that teach there, and they are more passionate than I have ever been about any job that I've ever done. So that gives me great pride in addition. I'm not a fan of any of these options, but I'm a realist, and we have to do something. Option 3 allows us to keep Fort Barton open. It allows our little ones to at least have a smaller school to call their own. It allows us to keep an eye on Fort Barton in hopes that one day we can reopen it as an actual local elementary school for us. As small of a pipe dream that may be, at least there's hope. And I am not a budget person. Admittedly, this is my first school committee meeting, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but I'm going to be transparent. I'm curious about other avenues that we can consider. For example, windmills or solar or something that may be able to cut down on some of the electricity costs or heating costs. I don't know if that's an option. I'm curious if that has ever been addressed. If someone could please get back to me or us at some point around those options, that's something that I'd be interested to hear about. Thank you.
Riley Kilmer, 50 Tower Hill Road. So it seems to me like some of the costs associated with option 1 aren't all fleshed out, particularly with regards to, they might be small costs, but we had mentioned that there was mention at the last meeting that there was not enough playground equipment for fourth graders. So something like that, has that been factored into the cost associated with option 1? And then also, what about any classroom modifications that would be needed for any of the classrooms at the middle school? So that's just something that I didn't see anything up there about that, and it had been mentioned at the last meeting. So I don't know necessarily if the cost savings for option 1 that's being presented is necessarily accurate. That's one of my first points. And then my second point is, I think all of you probably have gotten my email. I understand the concerns with option 3 with regards to not having any space for art or library, changing a library into 2 classrooms. Has there been any consideration of the use or rental of temporary buildings and the cost associated with that in order to try to alleviate that type of a problem? Has that been explored yet at this point at all?
Just a clarification, Dr. Sanchioni. Option 3 allows for space for special ed, art, etc., and allows for enrollment increases, decreases.
It was option 2 that...
It was option 2 that did not.
Okay, so option 3 does allow for space for art. And so I misunderstood because I thought someone that just came up was intimating that option 3 did not have any space for those types of things. Okay. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Catherine Mello, and I live on 138 Ave. And my son's currently a 3rd grader. He's been at Fort Barton since kindergarten, and it's been beautiful, and I'm grateful for that. It was consistent. It was one thing in his life that remained consistent. So I agree. I don't like any of the options. I'm sorry, I don't really know what to say. If I had to pick an option, it would definitely be 3, to keep him in the elementary setting. As far to put them into the middle school, I know they're strong, resilient, but to separate them, I mean, they're going to get an elementary experience. I can't say I really believe that. I'd like to believe it, but with everything the way it is, I don't. So, yeah, I'm frustrated a little. Like I said, that's been consistent, and I'm grateful up until now, but if I had to choose an option, it'd be 3. So, as Valentina expressed her concerns, my son's been saying the same things, and I feel like I should share that for him too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask members of the committee if they have any additional questions with regard to the presentation or any of the options.
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification. Many people have stepped up to identify the difference being 127,000. And that must be in comparison to the other figures. But bottom line, we're still going to have to make cuts no matter what option we choose. And the cuts are going to run deeper with the higher remaining balance to figure out. So I just want to make that clarification.
Thank you. Okay. Does any member of the committee wish to make any motions?
I'd like to make a motion to eliminate option 2.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there a discussion around that? I think I'll kick off that discussion. I think option 2 clearly is probably the least palatable of all of the options, primarily because the children are going to be negatively impacted by being in crowded classrooms with teachers who are forced to work in little space. You know, as much as it keeps the fourth graders, you know, in the elementary schools, it does indeed make for less of a positive educational experience. So I would personally agree with that. Anyone else? Okay, hearing.
I was trying to give others a chance. I will say this is an instance where clearly for us it's not all about the budget, because this option would leave us the least remaining to balance. But educationally, you know, we're looking at it and we're saying, you know, no movement for our teachers, no movement for our students, eliminating rooms for specials. That certainly in this instance, you know, I think we can say that, you know, it's not just about the budget, because, you know, this is the first one. I think that, you know, we all agree that we have to educate 1,500 students, but, you know, that this, you know, this doesn't do it for us educationally. So.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of eliminating option 2? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. So that leaves us with options 1 and 3. Do I have a motion on the floor from anyone?
For discussion purposes, I am going to move that we do approve option 1.
Do I have a second?
K3 Ranger, PK3.
She's moving that we, can you repeat it, please?
I'm sorry, I am making a motion for discussion that we approve option 1, which is K through 3 Ranger, PK through 3 Picasset, and grade 4 middle school.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. I will open the floor for discussion. I don't know if people want to volunteer, if you prefer I just go in order.
Go in order.
Mrs. Sherman, do you mind getting started?
Sure. So it's not the savings that we saw with option 2 that we just eliminated. However, it's still not the greatest remaining to balance. So that's a consideration. Class size seems more favorable in this option. There's room for growth if need be. And art and music continues to be in a separate space, so I support that as well. I will say, and I said this last time, my concerns also would be recess and making it an elementary experience for those fourth graders should we go to this plan. Thank you.
Mrs. Pabo?
For me, option 1 is not an option. I am not in favor of moving the fourth grade to the middle school. So that won't be an option for me.
Mrs. Paquette?
First off, it was never, I was against closing Fort Barton and losing educators. I thought we could look into other things in other areas that are in place right now that we could cut. I like option 1. I know that the educators would be flexible. I know that the kids' needs would be met in the middle school setting because our educators in elementary school are really awesome educators, and they would be flexible and they would make it work. I know that. I've worked with some of them. I feel it's emotionally and academically and socially just not a good place for them in fourth grade in the middle school. I'm concerned there's no playground. I'm concerned with the mingling of the other students. I would have to say I'm not for that, no.
Mrs. Polish?
So there's no perfect model, and we're going to make groups of teachers, parents, and community members unhappy no matter what we do. I do want to say, because we get phone calls, we get messages, that one of the concerns for option 3 that I had several parents reach out is the isolation of our kindergartners from that elementary school, taking them away from field days, from reading week, from let me just look at some of the other things she listed. Dr. Seuss looking at the different, all school assemblies. So I heard from parents, and I understand those of you here may not agree, but I heard from parents who were very concerned about isolating those kindergartners, isolating those pre-K kids. We talk about inclusion, Ms. Paquette brought it up at the last meeting, and very concerned about pulling them out of those elementary schools for all intents and purposes. There was also concern about splitting up families, because now you have K 1 through 4 are split, and again, the transportation issues, did rear its head. So that was one of the problems I did hear with option 3. I will say that I spent a lot of time talking to several teachers, and thank you so much for taking my phone calls this weekend, that one of the concerns definitely that's being expressed is the concern for the middle schoolers moving up. But one of the things I think when I did my own research and talked to different people, it's you don't want them in a middle school model. You don't want them with switching a teacher for every subject. You don't want them, sort of passing necessarily class like our 5th graders do, our 6th graders, our 7th graders do. And I think that's why our elementary leaders that were on our stage with us said they don't want that either, and they don't agree with that, and that would be an issue, but that would not be the model we would be following. The model we would be following would be the elementary school model. Yes, they're in that building, but we still would be following the elementary school model. And then the last thing, I guess, we heard a lot last year especially, but this year, about student-facing positions. And yeah, knowing that we're going to cut student-facing positions to bring back administrative positions, that's tough. We heard, if it's 2 positions, it's 2.5 positions. It's trying to prioritize those student-facing positions, which is what, we're being asked to do. And that's a struggle for me, is asking me to reopen a building for 1 grade with the concerns that have been expressed and choosing to instead eliminate student-facing positions for it. And please don't misunderstand, I think our administration and all of our support staff are very, very important. But when, I'm being asked to choose between student-facing positions and positions that aren't, we heard a lot of it last year, we've heard it this year, please prioritize those positions. So this is my struggle.
Thank you. We've had, I can't even count how many discussions to get us to this point. One of the things actually that stands out to me is how well our community is coming together to try to come up with ideas. We've received any number of ideas from probably several of you who are here this evening. I know Mrs. Gomes, you in particular, you were putting a lot of work on that, and I appreciate that. And I think one of the, I will also be looking to support option 1. And I think one of the things that struck me this evening, because we've spoken about how it would work prior to tonight, and I'll be very honest with you, a year ago when we started this discussion, and Dr. Sanchioni can attest to this, I told him more than once, I will absolutely never agree to that. Yet here I am this evening. Because the financial reality is we are going to have a minimum of $1.8 million as a whole next year. And this, part of this is that, part of this consideration is that. I think also what struck me this evening was Mrs. Marchand with your, you were very eloquent in saying, kids, they are independent, they are resilient, they're not victims. And I think if done well, and what I envision, and when we took the tour of the schools a couple weeks ago, Dr. Sanchioni explained, the kids are not going to be using those gross little lockers that are at the middle school, and we'll talk about the lockers another day. That the cubbies that they currently employ at their elementary schools will be moved over. Their classrooms will absolutely resemble the classrooms they once had, just in a different location. I would also say to you that we've been given assurances that 4th and 5th would be pretty much a community, if you will. It won't be an academy, because that's language that's specific to special types of teaching. The 4th grade would follow an elementary approach and schedule, and 5th grade would continue to follow a middle school schedule. We have specialists in the 5th grade that do manage that. However, they can eat lunch together. They have a lot in common with their 5th grade friends. They're with their friends today at their elementary schools. They would be going up there with them. I think there is opportunities here to save money on transportation. That is something that we haven't yet, especially because of the contract situation, we haven't been able to really hone in on, but I think there's opportunities there as well. And I think most importantly, what option 1 gives us is room for continued growth should that happen. We're all well aware of the ongoing proposals for building development in town, and should that happen, we have room to absorb some of the growth within the existing footprint, and we still have the Fort Barton building there at the ready to reopen should the circumstances warrant. Again, I think this will provide for the best educational experience for these children. With that said, this is not a decision we take tonight with any anticipation of it being in stone forever in time. If this doesn't work, despite our staff's best efforts, we will come back to the table and reconsider it for the following year. But we have to give this a shot. And I also, going back to the very beginning of this evening, we did sit with the town council this morning, a few members of the town council, and we're looking to get a little bit more public collaboration between the bodies so that we can start looking at the longer term, what's best for not only our students, but for our town as a whole. So I think that's definitely a positive as well. Again, thank you this evening for your patience. I do appreciate it. It's been, I think, a really good meeting. At this point, I will call for a roll call vote on this topic. So,
Diane, can I just real quick to your last point?
Yes.
Just quick. We did find out from Counselor Edwards this morning that the planning board has put a 2-year pause on the building at on Fish Road. So there is a 2-year pause. There will be no building. That will, and I want to thank the President Edwards and Vice President Paul again for meeting with us, but that will give us an opportunity to pursue other options that we've brought up that we didn't move forward, but that was important for people to know that the planning board did announce a pause on that building.
Diane?
Yes, sure.
As part of this 285 that would be remaining to balance, can we have a reminder of what that would look like in the positions?
Under option 3?
I'm sorry, yes, option 3.
So under option 1, we are still looking at 158,000. In option 3, it goes up to 285. So at that point, we will be back here in two weeks making additional cuts. Those additional cuts will very likely, in part at least, come from additional staff cuts. As well as I wrote down a number of things this evening that I will challenge that are not employee related. With that said, I heard a number of people say, "Oh, it's only 127,000." When you're in the red, 127,000 is a very high bar to reach, and every opportunity we have to realize savings that make sense, I will absolutely go for.
So just referencing information that was provided to us maybe 2 meetings ago, some of these cuts would be in the form of math intervention, reading intervention, and SEL district-wide.
Correct.
I'm not comfortable with cutting those positions. Our kids need them throughout the entire town.
Okay, do we have any other comments?
I'm just thinking we're offering a retirement incentive, so I'm just wondering how many people would be taking advantage of that that wouldn't be
Mrs. Pavo asked that earlier. Don't
through
know.
attrition? No,
We don't
okay.
know, it was just offered.
I'm just looking.
It could be 1, it could be
Right.
10, we don't know.
When we did this a few years back, I believe, in Dr. Sanchioni, I think I read it somewhere, that we were able to realize about 80,000 in savings.
That is correct.
Yeah. So one can hope we can do that again, but it's entirely up to the employees. If you want to offer me a retirement incentive, maybe I'll take it, but.
So 80,000 would be 8 teachers, right?
8 teachers, yes.
Okay.
No.
At 10,000 each.
Right.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Teachers, yeah.
Well, 80,000, no. 80,000 was the overall savings. So, for example, you give the incentive to a teacher who's on step 10, and they retire, right? So you're giving them $10,000 as an incentive, and very likely they're already quite close to retirement to take that.
Right.
Then we go out and we hire a teacher who's at a lower step. The hope
Right.
is, so that it's that salary differential that we could realize. At 80,000, it's probably only a few people. But we don't know. We absolutely don't know. Don't know till you try. And I welcome, these ideas. I think one of the other things, and I hate to continue talking, I know everybody wants to get out, but I also want to give some credit to some of the other parents that are here this evening and who have been very active in this. I don't see Ms. McNamara, unless I'm missing her. She's raised the question about Little Compton, about adult education, about other revenue-generating ideas, and I think a lot of those ideas are really good and things that we should, as a school committee, continue to take a look at. And I do want to thank her for those plans. Just because we may make a decision this evening doesn't mean we will not continue to look for good ideas to enhance our revenue opportunities.
Well, and in fairness, as long as I've been here, we've been trying to get those Little Compton students. We showed up at their last bid. We were ready. They had a consultant that rated us high, and the choice was made. So, again, agree we should continue, but we have also been doing that.
Okay, one more time. Do we have any other commentary? Okay, I will call for a roll call vote. Mrs. Polish?
Yes.
Oh, I will repeat the motion, please.
Yes.
The motion is to approve option 1, K-3 Ranger, PK-3 Picasset, and grade 4 at Tiverton Middle School. Roll call vote. Mrs. Polish?
Yes.
Ms. Paquette?
No.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Pato?
No.
And Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 3-2. Thank you all very much.
Do we have exec?
I would like to make a motion. You've had too much coffee today. Just saying. I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session under Rhode Island General Law. We will table item A. We will not be going into executive session for item A. However, item B we will. So the motion is to go into executive session under Rhode Island General Law 4246582, Legal Advice Council 94 MOA. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Yes.
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 We are in executive session. Thank you.